Doot 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 doot. Doot 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 doot. Doot 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 doot. Now that we have gotten the most curious tradition of having to name that tune out of the way, let us proceed. We want to discuss today sampling schemes. In order to help us understand sampling schemes, I have drawn a fictitious town, as you can see here, where there are several houses drawn, where each house contains a specific color as well as a number indicating the number of children in that household. You will notice a few things. There appears to be more blue houses here. Blue houses tend to have higher numbers of children in the home. There are more red houses on this side, and only two houses which contain the color orange. Orange having a large number of children for some unclarified reason. You may feel that it would be a wise idea for us to sample the entire town, but in many cases that would be illogical as well as unreasonable, considering constraints on both time and money involved in the survey. So instead, we want to sample a small part of the town. One method that we could use for this would be called SRS, which stands for a simple random sample. Such a survey, if done with a large sample size, can be an excellent way to get statistics, as it avoids certain types of bias which we will discuss in some of the other methods. An SRS could have certain problems. One problem being the risk of eliminating an entire group of interest. Let us assume that our survey wants to ask the question, should we tax homes which have too many children? We will pick some number, say 3. Homes with 3 or more children must pay an extra tax. Knowing the opinion of this town on that matter could be of great importance. A simple random sample, if we were to pick 5 homes, could easily leave out the orange homes, which orange homes tend to have a large number of children. Also, only picking 5 homes leaves the risk of sampling all blue homes, for example, where blue homes are known for having larger numbers of children. In this case, you would get results from your survey which would make you believe differently than what the town as a whole believes. If your SRS is large, then those kinds of problems should be done away with, as your survey will include some of every type of population in the correct proportion. Often, doing an SRS is very difficult. Imagine sampling 300 random UW students. In order to do this, you would have to have a complete list of all UW students, and the registrar's office does not allow a list like that to be given out. And that would make an SRS unreasonable for anyone except the highest administration within UW. Another common method is called stratified. Stratified attempts to solve the problem of certain colors not being selected. What stratified says is we will select 2 homes from each color. We will select 2 blue homes, 2 black homes, 2 red homes, and 2 orange homes randomly. In such a way, you can be guaranteed that each type will be in your sample. Stratified samples protect against the danger of having some minority left out of your study. Of course, when you analyze a stratified method, you must account for the fact that some of your strata are less popular, and if you take the sampling class, they will explain how to do that. Now, stratifying is often confused with the term blocking. This is most illogical. Blocking is what you do after you have a sample to assign whether they get a treatment or a control. Stratifying is what you do before you have your sample to pick who you will have in your survey or your experiment. As such, stratifying is very different than blocking. Another method is a cluster sample. For a cluster sample, you pick some range called a cluster, and you will sample everyone within the cluster, and you randomly pick another cluster and sample everyone within that cluster. Cluster samples are fun because it is easier to say, I will sample this entire neighborhood, than trying to randomly select throughout the entire town. As you can see, cluster samples may have the same problem of leaving out minorities. And in fact, cluster samples can make you feel like you have a larger sample than you really do. We have a clump of blues and blacks here, and a clump of blacks and reds there, but this may not represent a random sample of the entire town. It can, however, be a more cost-effective method if such things are of importance to you. Cluster sample is similar to systematic in that both of them divide our population into groups. With systematic, every group is sampled, but only a few people in each group. With cluster, there's only a few groups chosen, but everyone within that group is selected. Multi-stage takes the clustering idea one step further. Again, we group the population into clusters and we randomly select some but not all of the clusters, and then we randomly select some of the homes in that cluster but not all of them. A cluster sample would select every home. Multi-stage, we've now selected only a few houses within that neighborhood. We select this neighborhood and only select a few houses within that neighborhood. It is called a multi-stage. Multi-stage because selecting clusters was one level of the stage, selecting homes inside the cluster was a secondary level of that stage. Now, our next type is a that is a most inappropriate reaction for a Vulcan. As I was saying, a systematic sample. When you cannot do an SRS, a simple random sample, you may choose to do a systematic sample, where you say, I will select every fifth house. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if there were a fifth house, we would select that. It does not matter the 5 so much as having some system of selecting students. If you wanted to randomly select UW students, this is probably the way you would actually try to do it, standing on Prexy's pasture and stopping every 10th student who passed by you. There is still a potential for bias with this system if you happen to be standing out there as the football team passed or some such thing. You might end up getting too much of one type of student. But assuming none of that happens, you should be able to get a good sample out of this method. The last method is last for a reason. This is the cheapest and easiest method, but also the most prone to bias. A convenient sample is when you go out and sample whomever it is convenient for you to sample. That might be your family, your friends. It might be the 20 people that work here in the stat department. Whatever happens to be convenient. And if I was to actually assign introductory statistics students to go out and do a survey, this is probably exactly what would happen. They would survey the 10 people closest to them and say, oh good, I am done. Is that a real random sample of the town? No, but a convenient sample. I pick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Doom, I'm done. This means a convenience sample is highly illogical if you want good results, but very logical if your goal is speed and simplicity. If, however, you do not use a convenient sample, but try a simple random sample, then you will live long and prosper, at least statistically.